Welcome to Behind the Podium, Unveiling the Coach. Problem solvers have problems too. So here at Behind the Podium, I, Jared Cohen, and my co-host Alexander Ellis discuss the struggles, philosophies, demands, and practices of the coach, or said more broadly, health and wellness practitioner. To provide quality coaching is to enhance someone's life in an everlasting and unfolding way. This is not easy and requires a lot of due diligence and self-mastery on the part of the coach to be able to perform. So without further ado, join us as we dig deeper into the depths of the coach's mind. Welcome back, or welcome to Behind the Podium, Unveiling the Coach. I am Jared Cohen with my partner in crime,
Alexander Ellis.
And today we are going behind the podium with ourselves yet again in the same physical vicinity within the space of Oak Park, formerly known as CrossFit Los Angeles in Santa Monica, home to former guests Kenny Kane, Matt Chapala, Bria White, and today we are talking about online coaching of the future.
Well, it really is the coaching of the future. I spoke with a friend of mine who lives in Mountain View, which is close to Silicon Valley, and there are startups who are looking at virtual reality and augmented reality and how to make fitness a part of that experience. Like, how cool, already I think it's super cool that you can, open up YouTube and do a workout in your living room of really anything you want, whether it's, Pilates or yoga or HIIT or like I do cardio dance. You can do whatever you want. And how much cooler would it be if you then had the instructor in the room able to give you feedback? Like, oh, no, Alex, drop your ribs here. Or relax your traps there, that they were actually able to see and interact with you. Like, that would be so super cool. So online coaching is not something new in the movement space. It's also not new in the movement space, but I know there's been business coaching since probably the 90s happening either. Maybe not necessarily online because...
But like a teleconferencing sort of format.
Yeah, because it took a little bit for the internet and platforms to get to a place where they could support hundreds of people in a classroom together. But it's happening. And I feel if you are still in the camp of, digging your heels in the sand, no, I'm not going to participate in online coaching, you're going to miss out. It's like, cars are coming. They're the way of the future, and you won't get rid of your horse and carriage. Eventually, you're going to be the only one in town with a horse and carriage and be like, man, I wish I'd gotten a car.
Eventually, cars are going to be like horseback riding. Like, it's a thing it's like a thing you do on vacation,
right.
Like, you're like, oh yeah, like, I want to go in a car ride. Like, it's this, kind of, luxury activity, right?
Yeah.
Like, horseback riding, owning a horse, let alone owning a horse, like, that's a very expensive endeavor because it's no longer commonplace.
Yeah.
And,
that's so true.
It's funny to think about cars turning into that.
And how quickly, I'm sure it will happen in our lifetime. Well,
I have a very interesting perspective on this coming from the space of doing my entire graduate program online, or said differently, remotely. And it's been a really interesting experience for me, especially someone that has otherwise and continues to identify as someone that really needs like face-to-face teaching and coaching, and just how much of like an important variable that is for me to be more engaged and really feel like I'm getting the most out of it. However, for most of my experience taking classes online has actually been really positive, and it's been cool to see how that can work when there is the right mindset that sort of adapts to those scenarios. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's sort of another interesting conversation, is realizing that you potentially cannot coach or teach in the same way online mm-hmm. as you would in person. And when teachers overlook that, that's when there can be a lot of disconnect versus recognizing it and then kind of saying like, okay, how do I gotta sort of convey information differently or interact differently? A lot of when I have live classes, they are through Blackboard Collaborate, which is a software system that allows for essentially like group conferencing. And it's also interesting, this kind of change where like in growing up in class, we all know like how you were encouraged, like don't talk in class, like the teacher's talking, like, mm-hmm. but with this online format, there is this thing that is encouraged where you have like the chat on the side. Oh. And so like the teacher's talking, and it's sort of like encouraged that like you can chat with your other students, assuming it's about the content, right. And the teacher can see it, and then also like she can be talking or he can be talking, and then they can sort of like pay attention to what's like going on in the chat. Potentially if like so they're talking about something and then someone has a question about it, they may throw a question in the chat, and then they can kind of like field that question sort of in sync with their presentation versus maybe more of a distinction between like this is lecture time versus like pausing and then question and answer
right.
time.
Or I mean, how many lectures in undergrad where the professor's delivering the lecture and they're like, oh, we ran out of time, I'll see you guys next week. And you're like, I didn't get to ask any questions.
Right. No, very true. And at least this way there's kind of like, there can be a written record of questions, and mm-hmm. and then the teacher can be like, oh, like I didn't get to these things, like let me jot these things down and I can follow up with an email. So it is very fascinating. Also like the way in which it definitely can promote more of a community engagement. So for instance, like if I'm in a class that I just spoke about and I then chime in to say something or answer a question or maybe even ask a question, and then you get this kind of nice effect where people that are like, oh, that was a good question, or I like what you just said, can like, write that in the chat. So like mm-hmm. there's this more of this reciprocal relationship versus maybe speaking up in class or asking a question and then, you put your hand down, you stop talking, and it's just kind of like silent again. There's no communication beyond that, but right. You can still have these.
Yeah, definitely makes for more interaction.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking too along the lines, I know there's movement educators like Jules Mitchell is one that comes to mind, who is offering her workshops online. And so you don't get the immediate feedback of, your movement, your ribs are up or down or, whatever like that, because you're not in the same room, but you get the same lecture and you can watch it again and again and again. And I know she does put a limitation on hers. I think it's like a month or maybe less than that. But when you're in the room with someone, you're only going to absorb like 30% of what they're saying anyways. And so I just think that it's so much better and helpful for learning to be able to go back and do it at your own pace. Maybe you're better rested or more focused or just in the right mindset to be able to absorb more. And you might even have to hear the same thing like 18 times before you actually, capture whatever that lesson was to be had. So that's one of my personal favorite parts about online education, because I don't have to pay for the course 18 times, but I can take it another 18 times and learn. And another trend I've seen lately is, and I'm doing it with my own courses as well, is, hey, you buy access, you're a part of this tribe, you're a part of this group, and anytime I make changes or updates, you get all the updates. Yeah. So you are continuing to benefit and learn, as the teacher continues to learn and change and evolve and grow. So I think that's super cool too, which you could get in a classroom, but like, what if you can't go to class that day and you miss, like, oh, we just got back from a conference and I got this super awesome thing. Like, you're going to miss that if you're not there in person. But online, you can still get all that stuff. Yeah,
Isabel Barter, a former guest, fellow yoga tune-up teacher, she was telling me about Z Health, mm-hmm. movement educators, and that what they do, which is I think is really cool, is that when you buy, or I guess pay for the opportunity to go to one of their workshops or teachings, you then are allowed to return to that same workshop as many times as you want.
Without
paying again. Because their whole point is like, Z Health is very neurology based. And so their point is like neurology is always changing. We're always changing. We want you to, come back as many times as you need to learn the material, but also to potentially stay up to date with how we're changing the delivery of this.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, it's not like they're losing in the end either, because like you'll pay for additional courses, but I also like this idea of just supporting the learning process, whatever it takes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're getting a little bit off from the topic of online coaching, but just thinking about gyms or studios, whatever the physical structure is that allows people to maybe spend more time there after their class, and they want to work on something else, and they want to be in that space. Like martial arts studios, I know is what comes to mind. Where like, okay, I just took a class and I want to now. Do I have to go home? Like I'm done with the class, or if I have 30 minutes, can I stay? Can I work on these punches that I just learned on the punching bag for another 30 minutes, so that I also can have that time of deliberate practice that is being supported still within that community, and it's not about you paid for this one class. It's no, do whatever you need. We're here to support you, to digest and consume and embody this information as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so back to your point about online coaching and teaching, it seems like there is an opportunity for that to be much more supportive. And then it becomes less about the piecemeal content than it is about the actual understanding and then utilization of that, which is why it's the PowerPoints are no longer this protected thing. It's I'm using it here, but I'll send you a copy of it, or I'll send you the PDFs. I'll send you, I'll give you the recording.
Well, it's because you're sitting there with your iPhone taking pictures anyways, so.
Right, yeah.
Might as well.
But it's also interesting because I know I'm still conditioned from school where the slides come up or whatever is being shown, and you're trying to write as fast as you can to get it down, and then of course now you're even more removed from actually taking it in, because you're just trying to get it down so you have some record of it to then look back at it later, which you probably never do.
Never. Well, I'm just thinking too, this idea, I'm hanging out after class and I'm working on some stuff, which is essentially you getting stuff for free, right? Because this idea that comes up in the fitness space, at least with online education, is how much should we give away for free? Right? So if your student says, well, can I hang around for a little bit and use the equipment? And it's okay, well, that is going to be $7.50 a minute, and you have to pay, and no, you can't experience it for free. And to me, that just doesn't make sense, because you have to give a little to get a return.
Right.
And I think too, people really separate this whole online business idea from the physical business. Mm-hmm. And let's say, you're walking down the street and you see this building, and it's, nondescript, or maybe, the business name is on the outside and the name of the owner on the outside, but there's no windows, and the door, when you knock, only eyeballs show up. What do you want? What's the password?
Yeah.
This is what we do. And they'll only say it to you.
The eyeballs through the slit.
Right. And if you want to come in, it's going to be $297 or 5 payments of $99 a month for the next 5 months. It's why would I give you my money if I don't even know what you're about? Words don't mean anything to me. Even if there was a TV screen outside showing it, that wouldn't be enough. I want to feel it. I want to, not necessarily touch it, but I want to understand what you're about, so I can make my own educated decision of if I really want that product or if I really want to work with you, rather than just buying it blindly and hoping that it works out.
Yeah, and I think that there has to be more trust in the relationship building aspect of teaching and learning and offering services that are primarily intellectual property versus physical things. And so that's where I feel like, to me, the relationships and that loyalty, the customer that is willing to suffer inconveniences for your thing because of that loyalty, comes from the relationships that allow for a little less of the like hard structure of, it's $7.50 for every minute of equipment use, or, this payment, that payment. And that's not to like suggest that you're giving anything away for free, but you are rather encouraging someone to get the most out of this thing that they're offering, and also helping them grow with it. So your relationship to them can also grow organically. And that's why I love the idea of like teaching a class and teaching stuff with the intention that this is stuff that they can do on their own, so that they can continue to build this expertise and this familiarity with this thing, and have routines or moves or exercises that can be replicated in solitude to, again, reinforce this aspect of deliberate practice.
Yeah, and I think too, like, there's this idea that online education or your ideas are like something different to be protected. And it's like, well, it's a product. And it's probably been done before. Not in your voice, but different. I mean, even like Mrs. Fields' cookies. Was she the first person to ever make a chocolate chip cookie? No. She just made a really, really good chocolate chip cookie. And now it's like the standard for super bomb cookies.
Better than DoubleTree's?
I don't know. I've never had DoubleTree cookies.
Have you ever stayed at DoubleTree?
I don't think so.
Oh, wow. Like, one of their big things is that when you check in, you get a cookie, and it's awesome.
Well, maybe I was like, what's that? It's not a Mrs. Fields.
And if you ever look, I think now it's like even kind of part of their logo. Like, if you see like a DoubleTree vehicle, it usually has like the cookie picture on it. Yeah, it's awesome. They're great cookies. Totally got way off track. But no, actually, the point is there's this sort of give and take, right? Like, there's this, I'm checking in. I'm not being charged for the cookie. Like, it's part of this experience.
There's no cookie fee on your bill.
Right. And it makes me think of this word experience, because there's this pet store right next to my apartment in Santa Monica, and on the sign it says like, it says something about like, an experience. And I'm like, an experience? Like, what is an experience about this pet store? It looks to me just like any other pet store. Like, if anything, maybe it's a little small. It seems kind of bland. Like, but this, like, they're selling these words, and it just reminds me again of the kind of like marketing manipulative nature of using words that become sort of more popular, and functional fitness even, right? And again, not even defining these things. Like, why should the shopping experience be an experience? Like, what does that even mean?
It's better than Petco.
Right. Yeah. And so I think to this point that like there's going to have to be intangibles that potentially aren't as easily measured, that go back to this relationship building that relies on more than just the sort of one-to-one paying someone for everything you give them.
Yeah, and I can't tell you to trust me.
Yeah, right.
Like, you have to experience that for yourself and make the decision for yourself. And I also want to filter out people who are not my people, and that's part of what putting content out there for free is so that people can self-select whether they want to hang out with you or not. Because I don't want to waste time trying to explain why what I have is super great to somebody who's never going to buy.
100%. I think that's what's cool about a lot of these entrepreneurs in this space of a lot of free content and a lot of online personalities, whether it's through social media or podcasts, is that like those that are fans are like fans in such a way that even though the person or persons putting this stuff out don't know them, if they did meet them, they'd be friends because
super fans.
And it's like super fans because like there's a connection beyond just the what. Like the why is understood because of the amount of time you've gotten to spend with someone. Like it doesn't even have to be articulated. It's a feeling that can't be described of like, I connect with your message. I connect with how you've expanded on things and ideas and how you've been a little self-deprecating at times and that you also have a sense of humor and if you're trying to kind of protect that the additional exposure to that with a fee, you're ultimately, like you said, not going to be able to attract your tribe as well as what should be then ultimately more fulfilling with those you're working with.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're allowed to make money in fitness. Let's just say that. Like, say to yourself right now, I am allowed to make money. And there is a limited amount of money that you're going to be able to make in your community alone. Perhaps your community can't financially support the amount of money that you would like to have to live the life you want to live. Private training isn't always a thing for people, especially if you live in a neighborhood where it's more low income or more middle class or whatever that is. So putting yourself out there on the internet allows you to reach people all over the world. On any day, I'm talking to people in Australia, in Canada, in England, and like that simply would not happen if I just stayed in my box in the valley. It just wouldn't happen. And what you put out there too to share, it doesn't have to be your best stuff. It should be so good that you would like to charge for it, but give it away for free anyways, because then people know. I think of Marie Forleo, for example. So she does pretty much a weekly TV show on YouTube called Marie TV, where she interviews other thought leaders. She shares business ideas, and her whole brand and messaging is the world needs a special something that only you can offer. And she just started doing this thing where it was like a vlog, where it's like a day in the life of Marie Forleo. And I'm a Marie Forleo super fan, and I've never paid her a penny. That's the other thing.
Yeah, interesting.
I've told many other people to pay her pennies, and they have, but I have yet to pay her pennies. Right. But one of the things I thought was so funny in this vlog was that she was getting her bags at the airport, and there were all these people around, and nobody said a word about who she was.
Right. And
whereas
like, why are you not saying anything?
Yeah, if I saw Marie Forleo, I would lose my mind. I'm just like, oh my God, Marie Forleo, you changed my life. And still, I haven't purchased anything off of her. So I think that's the other thing, is that like, you can build this online community through what you share of people who just enjoy learning from you. And then there will be people who want to pay you for what they've learned from you to learn even more, to be in the inner circle with you, and to hang out. Because Marie Forleo, her whole business is online. And if she had limited it to just to the people who could come see her in New York, like, we wouldn't be standing here talking about her.
Yeah, and like you said, we as fitness people are allowed to make money, should make money. And again, just, taking that beyond fitness, people like we as teachers, we as coaches are allowed and can and should make money. Yes. I think there still is this sort of thing of like, oh, you're a teacher, you're not going to make any money being a teacher. And I think the internet has really broken that down, has like destroyed that association between finances and the traditional teacher role. And this whole idea of like, a lot of times when people put information out, they're like in some ways putting it out within the context of sharing what they've learned, that there is like sort of a teaching nugget within that. And how many times when you Google something, the intent is to learn something.
All the time.
Every day. Right. Yeah. And so that the online world has really created a different culture around teaching and learning, and the just sort of empowerment of everybody to share in a coaching way. That like I just love the sort of every man or woman that can be on YouTube and saying like, hey, here's how to do this, or like here's something that maybe most people are like, you don't know how to do that? And it's like, yeah, there are people out there that like don't know how to put together their IKEA chair. Like, I'm sorry, but yet I have a better way, or I feel like I have a more optimal way to help someone more seamlessly do this. Like, I just recently moved from San Diego to Santa Monica, and I'm packing up, and I have one of those like tape dispenser things, and I'm just like fumbling for like 5 minutes, like I can't get the tape in here, and then I'm like, YouTube, and it's like there are a lot of videos of people showing you how to like put your tape, like your roll of tape in the tape dispensers, and like it just doesn't stop, and that's so cool to me. This like just even the thought that goes into like, hey, I bet like people are maybe struggling with this, and it's not just about like I want to be heard as much as it's like I think I have a better way to help someone with this thing, even though it may be as like mundane as like the tape in the tape dispenser, and that really is powerful. And then going back to your point about Marie Forleo and free information, I know for me, like, man, the amount of books I've read now or authors that I've gotten into and then actually bought something of theirs has all come from some exposure of their work that was free. That like from other podcasts, somebody comes on and they're being interviewed, and the opportunity to get to know them in this very three-dimensional way, and then say like, wow, like I love some of the thoughts that were brought up in this conversation. I now want to go get this book to take a deeper dive. And I swear I have a different relationship walking into a bookstore now because of like all the sort of like floating titles of different authors I've listened to interviews. It's like sort of fun to be like, hey, I wonder what like books I'll sort of accidentally run into because that I then remember from somebody that was in some medium of free content.
Right.
And I think we just need to remember that, and that ultimately it's not even really free, right? It's sort of like maybe the first layer of it is free, but in some ways it is connecting back to some relationships or relationships that allow for a positive financial give and take that more easily allows people to offer themselves to the world.
Yeah. Well, because money too, it's this idea of like money and lack and all of that is really a concept that we created for ourselves. Like let's go back 1,000 years and, you probably traded things to get what you wanted. Somebody had something you wanted, and so you gave them something in order to get that. And so was that free or was it just an exchange, And so I think people need to be a little bit more open-minded to giving things or trading things for something in return, even if that return on your investment isn't going to come
right away
for some time. It's like there's this really great book that I recently read called The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist. And she talked all about money and just like reframing your ideas about money, especially as a yoga teacher. Like, how dare you make money? You're in yoga,
right.
And I just don't subscribe to that at all, because we need to, pay our bills and put food on the table and food in the mouths of our cute little puppies and kitties. And then, people say, oh, well, you can get sponsorships and get free clothes. I'm like, yeah, free clothes don't keep my lights on, so it doesn't really matter. So reframing our mindset about money and understanding that it is just this exchange, and it happens to be an exchange of dollars, but it doesn't have to be just dollars. Maybe it's energetic. Maybe, instead of like trying to hoard and keep and like trying to keep everything in your, I think of like, let's say there's like rocks falling and you're trying to catch all the rocks in your hands. Like you can only catch a limited amount, but letting stuff flow through you, there's always a constant flow if you let that flow happen. And so just to me, giving stuff for free is part of being a member of that give and take economy and creating opportunities to meet and connect with new people, which I wouldn't get to do if I just sat in my room all day, or I just, went and taught my classes, my privates, and I went home. You know, like, I think there has to be some give and take. And when any question you have can be answered on the internet, why not be a part of that conversation? And the internet economy right now really is like the wild, wild west. It's open hunting for whatever it is you want to do. And if you have a unique idea, and even if you don't think it's that unique, like you're saying, oh, look at all these videos about how to put tape into a tape thingamajigger. Right. It's just, who resonates with you and your message, and what works for you may not work for me, but like, there's enough people on this planet for all of us to go around, Just like get in the game instead of sitting there and digging your heels in the sand and being like, I don't want to. Just get in the game.
Mindset of abundance versus a mindset of scarcity.
Yes. So much yes.
Well, on that note, we will end the episode for today. Mm-hmm. Any final thoughts or parting words, Alex?
Always. The references and things we talked about in today's episode live on behindthepodiumpodcast.com, where you can also look at other episodes, and our beautiful faces are right there on that site. And as always, we would so appreciate if you would head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. It really helps to get the show in front of more people, and we love to read all of the things that you guys are sharing as well. And if you want to come hang out on Instagram, we are at Behind the Podium. And Facebook, Behind the Podium Podcast, all the places. Come hang out, join in the conversation. I would love to continue this conversation too about money and being afraid of earning money, and curious to see what you think about that.
It's a great overriding topic. The relationship between money and the coach, the teacher, the healthcare practitioner. I understand the inherent sort of dissonance at times, especially like when I think about it, particularly in the context of like a therapist or something. And, when someone is already having such a hard time, right? And like, in order to help them, you have to kind of like take something from them. But, that's just one sort of way to frame it. And as we've tried to illuminate here, there's so much more there, and the online realities are actually allowing for, I think, a much more egalitarian and democratized approach to rid ourselves of these awkwardnesses or dissonances related to the teacher having to like take money from the student.
Maybe it's also you charge enough money to some people so that you can serve others for free.
Exactly, right. Totally.
Don't be afraid of it.
Yeah, there's a circular thing going on. All right, until next time.
See you later.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Behind the Podium, Unveiling the Coach. If you have enjoyed what you listened to, head over to iTunes and leave us a review. More information on each episode and the podcast in general can be found at behindthepodiumpodcast.com. We'll catch you next time.